Let's talk about something kinda wild happening at the very heart of the AI boom. The biggest companies are investing billions of dollars right back into each other. It's creating this tangled web of money, and it has a lot of smart people asking one giant question. Is all this incredible growth for real? Or is it just a high-tech illusion, a bubble that's waiting to pop? To really get what's happening, the Financial Times pointed to this powerful ancient symbol, the Ouroboros. You've probably seen it. It's that image of a snake literally eating its own tail, which has always represented this kind of eternal, self-consuming cycle. So what on earth does a mythical snake have to do with the future of artificial intelligence? Well, it turns out it's the perfect way to describe the circular, almost bizarre financing deals we're seeing everywhere. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to unravel exactly how this ancient symbol explains the modern AI gold rush. Okay, so let's jump into what some folks are calling the AI money go-round. If you follow this space, you've probably seen these crazy spaghetti diagrams showing this tangled mess of investments flying between all the major players. It looks super confusing, I know, but it really boils down to one simple concept. And that concept is called circular financing. It's actually pretty straightforward when you break it down. A big company invests in a smaller one. Then, the smaller company uses that exact same money to buy products from the big company. And just like that, the big company gets to count that spending as new revenue. It's a perfectly neat, closed loop. And this is a brilliant way to picture the potential problem, right? It looks like it's a perpetual energy machine, but it's not actually creating any new power. It's just circulating what's already inside the system. To actually make something happen, you need energy from the outside, or in this case, real external customer demand. So how does this so-called self-powering loop actually work day to day? Who are the real players, and what do these deals look like? It's like a simple three-step dance. First, a tech giant, think Amazon or Google, pumps a few billion into an AI startup. Step two, that startup immediately turns around and spends that cash on cloud computing or custom chips from that same tech giant. And then, step three, the investment comes right back home to the investor as revenue, making their sales numbers look absolutely fantastic. And make no mistake, this is not some niche thing. It is happening everywhere with the biggest names in the game. You've got NVIDIA pledging huge investments in companies like OpenAI, who then, of course, buy NVIDIA's chips. Amazon pours billions into Anthropic, which then commits to using Amazon's cloud. Google's in on it too. And then there's Elon Musk's whole ecosystem where xAI, X, and Tesla are so interconnected, it's honestly hard to tell where one company stops and the next one begins. Now, this tangled web of mutual back-scratching has financial historians feeling, well, pretty worried. Because we've seen something a little bit like this before, and it didn't end well. In post-war Japan, you had these massive industrial groups called keiretsu. They were built on cross-shareholdings, companies owning big chunks of each other to lock in supply chains and create stability. But here's the thing, when Japan's massive asset bubble burst, that tangled web made it nearly impossible to figure out who was actually in trouble and where the real risks were hiding. So the big question today is, are AI's giants accidentally building that same fragile house of cards? This whole situation feels like a very high-tech, very expensive version of that old risky bet. Remember the dot-com bust? Telecom companies laid down literally thousands of miles of fiber optic cable that nobody ever used. Well, today, the AI industry is laying down gigawatts of computing power, making this enormous bet that someone, somewhere, will not just show up, but will pay enough to make it all worthwhile. And the sheer scale of this bet, it is almost impossible to wrap your head around. We're not just talking about money here. We're talking about the physical stuff, the infrastructure and the raw energy needed to power this whole revolution. Just look at this number. McKinsey projects that by 2030, the AI industry is going to spend $5.2 trillion on capital expenditures. That's the chips, the data centers, the energy, the whole shebang. To put that in perspective for you, that is more than the entire annual GDP of Japan. So what does all that money buy? Well, it buys a lot of hardware that needs a lot of power. This number, 23, that's the estimated number of nuclear power plants it would take just to power OpenAI's currently planned data centers. Not the whole industry, not every AI company, just one company's current ambitions. And this is where the disconnect just becomes so clear. On one side, you have this monumental, multi-trillion-dollar investment. On the other, what are we actually getting for it? I mean, sure, there are absolutely incredible scientific breakthroughs, like using AI for protein folding. But let's be honest, a huge chunk of the output is what a lot of people are just calling slop, viral deepfakes, anime chatbots. And for real business use, McKinsey says the success rate for AI pilot projects is less than 15%. The math just doesn't feel right. Okay, so this sounds like a classic bubble just waiting to pop, right? Well, not so fast. To be fair, there is a really strong counterargument to be made here. There are some very real, very important differences between today's AI boom and the bubbles of the past. For starters, just look at the valuations. Back in the dot-com bubble, internet stocks were trading at an absolutely insane 60 times their future earnings. Today's AI leaders, yeah, they're expensive, but they're closer to 35 times. And unlike so many of those dot-com companies, these businesses have massive, real, actual earnings. The fundamentals this time around are just plain stronger. The big tech players are basically financial fortresses, generating over $200 billion in free cash flow every single year. Their balance sheets are rock solid. Plus, a lot of these circular investment deals are structured really smartly, with performance clauses that give investors an out if things don't pan out. This is not the same speculative house of cards that was built on mountains of debt. But even with those strong balance sheets and real profits, there's one enormous physical problem that money alone just can't solve. It's a problem that you're not going to find on any quarterly earnings report. And this might just be the one thing that puts a hard ceiling on the entire AI revolution, no matter how clever the financing gets or how brilliant the code is. It all comes down to electricity, the raw brute force power needed to run these trillions of dollars of data centers. You can't just print more of it. And this timeline really just puts the problem in sharp relief. The demand for power from these AI data centers is exploding right now, an immediate, massive need for gigawatts. But then you look at how long it takes to build the stuff to meet that demand. It can take up to a decade just to get a big solar or wind farm permitted and built. A new nuclear reactor, the last one in the US, took over a decade to come online. The AI chips might be on schedule, but the electricity to run them is on a completely different, much, much slower timeline. Which brings us right back to our friend the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. And one final critical question. This whole circular system is basically built on pure, unadulterated optimism. But if that optimism slams into a very real, very hard power wall, and the demand for all this crazy expensive infrastructure never really shows up, who gets stuck with the bill when the circle finally breaks? Is it the investors, the lenders, the utility companies, or maybe all of us? It's a trillion-dollar question that, for right now, nobody seems to have a clear answer to.